Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for everyone for dialing in. I think today we have a very special guest with us for our first online digital series, Edward from Razer Fintech. Thank you, Edward, for coming over.
Thank you, Eric. Thanks for having us.
Cool. Today we're going to talk a lot about Razer Fintech and a lot of interesting initiatives that's going on. But before we start, just a few housekeeping rules for our audience here. So first of all, if you have any questions that you want to ask Edward, please feel free to drop it in the Q&A session on Zoom. And if you have any other questions, feel free to raise hand. I'll try to pay attention to it, to the people that's raising hand. But without any further ado, let's get cracking. So Edward, to get started, maybe you can give us a quick, brief intro about yourself. How did you end up in Razer Fintech, and what is Razer Fintech all about?
Sure, thank you. I started off in the software industry as a software engineer and worked for software companies, but joined financial services more than 10 years ago. So getting beyond the millennial stage, right? And I worked for Citibank initially in Ireland, in Dublin, where we set up the first innovation lab for Citi in Europe. And then with Citi moved to Asia and worked for them here in the corporate banking side of things. And then decided to stay in Singapore and join the United Overseas Bank, one of the 3 Singaporean banks, and I think they're a big bank in Malaysia as well. So in UOB, I was the group technology head for both the retail bank and the wholesale bank, and we have done a lot of good work in digital banking, including designing and building UOB Tomorrow, which was initially launched in Thailand. Then I spent a couple of years in Hong Kong with an insurer and helped push the digitalization agenda for insurance, and decided to return to Singapore, and the digital bank race was fully on. It continues to be fully on, and decided to join Razer because I believe that Razer are very well positioned to do something different in the digital banking space if we get the license, of course, from the MAS.
Very interesting. So Razer as a company, I think to most consumers out there, people identify Razer as a consumer hardware company, right? I think I grew up with Razer being my gaming mouse. And maybe you can share a little bit about how did Razer end up falling into the fintech space, and what is the strategic angle there for the company?
Razer we're much more than a hardware company. We have hardware, we have software, we have services. If you look into the virtual gaming world, we have virtual game credits called Razer Gold. And I think that's already a step into, in a way, financial services. And I think Razer Fintech is the logical progression of expanding that business. And I think Razer Fintech came about through an acquisition in Malaysia, Money Online. We have 3 product lines. We're in payments, online payments. We also process offline payments, and then we have also a wallet. So in Malaysia, we're well known and well used, and we're expanding beyond Malaysia as well into Singapore and the rest of Southeast Asia, and then we have ambitions beyond that as well.
Awesome, awesome. So let's talk about digital bank, right? The craze in town these days, and a lot of discussion around it. I think let's start off with your experience, right? Like you built a digital bank in Thailand for UOB, and you spent quite a number of years kind of pioneering or spearheading innovation effort in Citibank. And now you're in Razer, which is not a finance company, right? Not a financial institution. So how is the transition for you like, and how are you guys doing it differently than a typical incumbent banks?
Sure. I always make a distinction between digital banking and digital bank. And I think a lot of the incumbent banks that are digitizing, and digitalization is being even pushed more to the forefront due to the current crisis. But none of them really are a digital bank per se. So when I talk about digital bank, would be digital from ground up. And if you really start with a blank slate behind a bank and you think about it, if you interact with your customers fully digitally, then you don't need branches. If you don't process paper, everything is digital, then you don't need operations. And if you use the modern technologies like running the cloud, then you don't need the data centers either. So that allows you to, first of all, have a complete digital model for your customers, but also from an operating model point of view becomes much leaner. And and you can build a bank with much less people and with smaller investment. And I think the benefit of that as well is that you can scale it out faster, scale it into new product lines, scale it into new partnerships, and scale it geographically as well. So that's a hard thing to do when you carry a lot of legacy like the incumbents do. And I think this is the interesting race here, because probably 10 years from now, all banks will be digital, but some of the incumbents who transformed and changed fast enough will get there. Some of them, I don't think they will get there. And then the new entrants, the new digital banks, of course, they will have to scale as well. And in a way, all the banks will look similar in 10 years from now, and it all really comes down to how they serve their customers.
Fair, makes sense. And my very shallow understanding is that in Singapore, the digital banking license, everyone is kind of forming some sort of a consortium / partnership to bid for the license, right? So I understand that you guys are partnering with one of the largest supermarket chain and an insurance arm for Pacific Century Group and a VC, a car marketplace. Why these partners, right? What's the angle behind it?
Yeah, so part of being digital is also being open and be able to build up an ecosystem through partnerships, because again, that's what our customers, youth and millennials want. So they want to come to us and be able to fulfill their lifestyle needs as well, not only simple banking needs, which probably they can do with any other bank at this stage. So if you look at the partnerships and the consortium we put together, every one of those partners has a strategic value, right? At Sheng they have supermarkets, so in a way they have offline touch points as well that we can leverage. WD are a very well-known digital insurer. In a way we can distribute their products as well and combine banking and insurance product. And Caro, they're an e-marketplace. Again, so the marketplace and e-commerce becomes very, very important these days, and we have them in our portfolio as well.
That's interesting. So how does the partnership work? Who is doing what? Who is bringing what to the table?
Yeah, so we are the ones fronting it, but on the other hand, we are the ones putting the platform together and the product offering together. And we haven't gone down yet into designing every user journey and every product, but if we get the license, we will definitely do that.
Makes sense. So one of the things that please correct me if I understand this wrongly, right? So my understanding is that there's currently 21 applicants in Singapore, but they're only issuing 2 digital full banking license. Is that right?
Yeah, so there are 21 for both the full bank and the wholesale bank. I think for the full bank, there have been 7 applicants. Okay. I'm not sure every one of them announced.
Yeah.
But you're right, there'll be 2 licenses.
Yeah.
That's what we know as well, yes.
And how do you feel about your chances of getting one? And if that doesn't work out, are you guys going to still march ahead and figure out a workaround, or like a true startup way, or what?
Well, we would love to get the license in Singapore, and we're cautiously optimistic about it. We think we bring a lot of value to the table, right? Our brand, our understanding of lifestyle, our current fintech capabilities. In Singapore, we're a Singaporean company as well. However, if the license doesn't come through in Singapore, we still have a vision of building a global youth bank. So then we'll probably pursue licenses in other markets.
Right, makes sense. What is the product vision there? Because you guys have branded it as a Razer Youth Bank, and I am assuming that you're targeting the younger people. What is the angle there? What do you think is gonna differentiate you guys against other players?
Yeah, so youth and millennials can start really early in people's lives, and we're looking at acquiring clients from our existing user base. We have about 80 million users around the world, and a chunk of them are in Singapore and in Asia. However, they have different lifestyle and banking needs, and we would look at offering products which are tailored to their needs, and not only in the retail space, but also in the SME space. So many of these youth are young professionals, and they're also looking at starting their own startups. And we will be able to bank them both from a personal, but also from a company point of view. And then when they start families, again, you can look at the relationships within the extended family, and maybe even go beyond the youth and millennial side of things and go to their parents, go to their grandparents, and so on. And really offer, I think it's really important from a user experience point of view, offer services and products which are tailored to their lifestyle.
Right, makes sense, makes sense. So maybe I'd like to kind of pull ourselves back a little bit on this discussion, right? So I suppose banking experience it's a little bit different across different country that you're in. I think in Singapore it feels like it's a little bit better. Digital banking, not digital bank. So digital banking experience seems to be a little bit better in Singapore, in Malaysia. I think depending on which bank you bank with, you have different experience. And obviously in more emerging markets, you have local players that's trying to eat into the space, right? Being the source of your month-to-month salary deposit account. What is the problem in Singapore that you guys think you guys are best positioned to solve that the young people are facing?
It's a very good question. So the word underserved is being used usually in terms of underserved from the banking industry. But if you're in a place like Singapore, there you can get a bank account, you can get a basic card, so you're not really underserved from a product and service point of view. However, what we say and what we believe is that youth are underserved from a user experience point of view. So the current incumbents don't really personalize and tailor their services to the different categories. So if you want to open a bank account as a 16-year-old or a 60-year-old, is pretty much the same process. I think in markets like Malaysia, for example, and beyond, the definition of underserved changes. I think there's a user experience play as well. However, there are many people who don't have access to financial services. It's really bringing those people into the fold. Even our current Razer Wallet product helps with that. So you can get access to digital payments without having access to the banking system. So the bank would be a natural extension to that. I think what's really important here is also access to credit. The traditional way of scoring and evaluating, assessing credit applications based on your steady income, based on payslips and so on. But there are technologies out there where you can use smartly data and AI to score people differently and give them access to credit in a smart and responsible way as well.
Gotcha. So one of the things that we've been thinking, we've been kind of trying to understand, right, is that you are obviously the technologist, right? And you have worked in banks, and now you're trying to set up a digital bank from ground up. From a technology standpoint, is it very hard for bank to transition? And is that a head start that you see that you guys have, being a tech company?
I think a lot of the existing banks have been set up over last 20, 30 years. So they are still running a lot of legacy systems. Believe it or not, some are even older than that. Yeah, I don't think it's easy to take those systems and modernize them. And I think the biggest technology trend that we see these days is really computing. And if you're an incumbent and you run a lot of old systems, they don't even run in the cloud. So as a player, in a way, it's easier to take the latest and greatest in technology and run them in the cloud, so you can achieve all the security, scalability that the cloud gives to you. I think the other advantage of modern systems also is that you can integrate various components as an open banking platform. And we have already reached out and partnered with some of the new providers. So by integrating existing components will give you also speed because you don't have to build everything in-house. Of course, all this needs to be done in a secure fashion. So cybersecurity becomes probably even more important. However, the benefit of running an open banking cloud-based platform exceeds the risk introduced by cybersecurity, which can be mitigated anyway.
Very true. So this might be a pretty random question. Given the gaming route of Razer as a company, will we see any sort of gamification in your digital bank product?
Absolutely, and even going back to some of the digital banks or digital banking experiences launched by incumbents, they include already gamification experiences, right? However, Razer, due to our DNA and ecosystem, we believe we can do it better than the incumbents.
And you're saying it because you've experienced both sides of the parties, yeah?
Absolutely, yes.
Let's talk a bit about the elephant in the room, right? Like the coronavirus situation. How is that impacting you guys so far, and how are you guys holding up?
Yeah, I think that, and when I get asked this question, I always take a pause and just remind myself and everyone that it's a crisis and it's impacting people in very bad ways, and even lives are being lost. So from our point of view as a business, we're doing well. We are in a way benefiting from some of this. We can see online payment volumes going up. However, this is a moment for us where we reflect and also use it as an opportunity to give back and also help our customers, help our partners, help in a way our merchants as well in the whole ecosystem.
So maybe you can share a little bit about the 50 million relief funds, right? I'm pretty sure some of our audience currently are trying to understand a little bit more as well. Maybe that's a plug to your new initiatives.
Sure, it's actually 50 million US dollars. And it's a fund put together by Razer Inc, Razer Ventures, Razer Fintech. And the information is publicly available, and we already had a lot of companies reach out. And if you believe that it's something that we could work together on, and there is some help we could provide, please reach out to us.
And how's the take-up rate so far? Are you guys seeing a lot of interest or so?
There's a lot of interest, yes.
Right, that's interesting. How about the surgical mask initiative? Right, there's a lot of PR around that you guys set up a production line in 24 days. How did that come about, and what's the overall play there?
Yeah, so this is an initiative from Razer Inc, and Min has been instrumental to launch this. And if you think about it, it's a very practical way to help. And masks are becoming more available these days, but the quality of masks is not great. And what we have done, what Razer have done, we have set up a production line to highest standards in Singapore, and we control the quality of the mask. They are surgical masks, they're not cloth masks. And what we're doing, we're giving away one mask to every adult Singaporean. And just a couple of days ago, the Singapore government announced an initiative of helping small businesses, including hawkers, to digitize. What we are going to do, we are also going to give away masks to incent people to use digital payments with hawkers. So in a way, it's a good way to not only help directly, but also incent people to move towards a more digital way of payment.
Right. So is this like I suppose like a temporary initiative, or do you guys plan to continue manufacturing surgical masks moving forward, given the price is like surged by, I don't know, 100 times, right, in the last five months?
Yeah, so it's hard to tell, right? Because for now, there is no end in sight to the current crisis. I think things are getting better. I think people understand much better what to do. However, wearing a mask probably will be here with us for quite a long time. But it's hard to predict, of course, what is going to happen.
Would we be expecting to see some really swanky looking masks from Razer soon?
I can't talk about that. So I'm open to ideas. Feel free to suggest ideas.
That may be a good segue to the FinTech Hackathon that you guys organize as well, right? Talk to us about that. Is that like a last minute initiative because of the COVID, or has it been planned all along and it just happened to clash at the same time?
Yeah, we're planning to run a hackathon more from a talent attraction point of view. And actually, we're planning to run a physical hackathon, and then the crisis hit. And then we said, okay, maybe not do it. But then talking to some of our partners, including the Singapore Management University, we realized that there's a whole generation of students who are uncertain about the job these days. So then we pivoted the hackathon to, first of all, becoming an online hackathon. And the second part, we really talked to the student community. And what we have done is we assembled some of our digital banking partners. So Mambu provided banking sandbox running in AWS, or another partner of ours. That came with APIs. Perks, a gamification company, we came with APIs. And we're very, very impressed about, first of all, the interest. We had many teams participate. Unfortunately, we had to filter down to 125 teams. And this is three team members average. And then during 48 hours, all the teams participated. We had 70 submissions. And then we took it from 70 to 20, and then to 5, and 2 teams won. But really, we were blown away by the quality of what the teams have produced. And the top teams are student teams as well, which I think it's amazing. And even if you look into teams which didn't make the top 5, some of the ideas are very, very original, and first time we have seen these ideas.
So are those ideas public already, or is this something you can shed some light on?
So the hackathon has been streamed online, which again is a first hackathon which is streamed on Twitch, right? So the ideas which we have streamed there live, that everyone can see them. So now we're in dialogue with the teams to see how we can actually commercialize some of these ideas fast. And also we're in dialogue with some of the students, offering them internships, and our partners in the hackathon are offering internships as well. So we're achieving our objective to help students to find jobs, not only through the internship part, but also learning the new skills that they need in this digital open banking environment.
Interesting. Can you share some of the ideas that you find interesting, that you feel like it's super promising, whether or not they made it to the top?
Sure. So the one of the teams that won, they have this idea about managing subscriptions. But they say that our lives will be more and more, we'll buy more and more subscriptions, but we're not very good at managing them. So they had all kinds of ideas about how to aggregate subscriptions, how to manage them better, how to eliminate subscriptions that you don't need, which we think is very original. And we're working with them to see how we can commercialize it.
So the angle is that we are subscribing to a bunch of platforms, and very often we don't even remember which one we subscribe to, and they're coming up with a solution to do it.
Correct. And if you think about it, this is not a banking product per se, but on the other hand, it's a financial services product, and it's very relevant to the lifestyle that we live today. So that's the beauty of it. And such a product, even if some of the banks maybe they think about it, sometimes it's very hard to bring to the market and commercialize. So that's why us as a fintech and as a hopefully future digital bank will be able to work with teams like the ones who participated in hackathon and companies who are interested to bring such novel ideas to the market.
Interesting. So I'm going to pick a few questions from our audience and start throwing it over to you. That's an interesting one. So we have YJ Liao here, apparently a big Razer fan across all divisions. So here's a question on the plan, like on Razer's approach in terms of decision making, right? So the overarching idea is that it's often quite easy to say that, hey, we are a lot more nimble, we are a lot more agile than banks, and we can transform and how we can replace and optimize all these legacy systems and whatnot. And I suppose that's the pitch, right, from everyone. Maybe can you share more on Razer's approach when it comes to decision making, from having a problem statement? How do you guys go through this whole process of deciding what's the problem, what's the cost and benefit analysis, how do you evaluate them, and from all the way to implementing them?
Sure. So maybe to contrast to some of my previous experience, a lot of the decision making is done by committees. So committees are very effective in terms of distributing accountability, but also committees take a lot of time to manage. So you typically socialize decision with committee members before, you get everyone's input, then you bring it to the committee. By the time the decision is made, first of all, it takes a long time. And second, as well, sometimes the idea gets watered down by the time it gets approved. Right? I think as a tech company, our DNA is very different. So we believe very much in accountability. And we also operate at much faster speed. And if you have a good idea, it can come very, very quickly to the CEO. We evaluate it and we can make a decision very fast. So that's the difference, I would say, between committee-based decision-making and at the end of the day, executive decision-making, which of course comes with accountability and responsibility.
Right. So if I work in your team and then I have this like crazy idea that I think is going to change everyone's life, do I just swing by your room and just knock and say, hey, Edward, I have this crazy idea? Or like, is that like a standard process that I have to go through?
Well, I think the standard process would be, hey, I have a crazy idea. Okay. And then I would say, oh, that's interesting. So let's talk about the business case first, right? And then let's see how it fits. And then we'll have a chat about it. I will bring it up to my CEOs. Then we make a decision. And one thing is sure that we'll get the decision fast, one way or the other. I think the other part which we're very good at, and sometimes it's not so obvious, but we prioritize constantly what we do. So again, in a more traditional organization, you lock in a roadmap for maybe a year or half a year, and then you stick to it. We look at it every week, and if we decide to do something different, then we just prioritize it. So for example, the mask initiative wasn't on the roadmap at the beginning of the year, for sure, Then when the idea came, then we decided to do it. We all rallied behind it, and we prioritized it, and we got it done.
So do you have like, is this like
This
a
is
very commonly understood practice in the team where, hey, if you have idea, come to us? Or do you have like an army of researchers looking for interesting ideas all around the world and try to figure out whether it's feasible in the market that you guys are operating in? How does it really work? Or was it mostly from you guys, from the leadership team?
For sure, we don't have an army of researchers, but we're keeping our hands on the pulse of the market, and we get ideas from the outside as well. But I think it's part of the culture for people to come and voice their ideas.
I think it feels like digital bank is the talk in town with a lot of questions around that, right? Another pretty interesting one is that it is easy to say that we want to launch a digital bank. It's going to make it easy. It's a new distribution channel. No one wants to go talk to the RM in the branch anymore. No one wants to talk to any real human being before they start a new bank account, set it up, right? Can you elaborate a little bit more on how you guys have thought around designing your product and services for particularly your target segment, right? And maybe a good angle is that maybe you can reference some of the product right now in the market, like say DBS would have their own bank app, and then how do you guys think yours is better or different, or however you describe it?
Yeah, so if maybe to shift a little bit into more the startup space, right? So when you're a startup and you want to take a loan, then the typical process you go through is you go to a government website and you download whatever information you find there, or you go to an incubator. So basically, you have to go into multiple places, talk to your friends in terms of understanding what it takes to start a company, right? And then to start the company, you'll bring some money, your parents will give you some money, your friends maybe will fund it. But again, if you go to the bank, typically they'll ask for collateral in terms of guaranteeing the credit that you will take. So how can you reimagine that whole journey? Is there a place where you could come and first of all learn about what a startup takes to start? And then as you go through the journey, also bring the right relevant information and data to the table. So when you get to the stage of asking for a loan, there is enough data for us to be able to approve the loan. I think that's a good example.
So what you're saying is that you guys will be more, I suppose, effective with collecting data points.
And more tuned into people's lifestyles. I think that's really the key point, is about user experience. And going back to the point of underserved, right? So
Okay.
I think user experience is everything at the end of the day.
So I'm gonna play a bit of like devil's advocate and poke a little bit on that, right?
Sure.
That is, can't the bank do that as well? Like, is it that hard?
Well, that's a good question. Probably you need to ask one of the incumbents.
Can you talk us through your process of setting up a digital bank in Thailand, and how is that doing now after a few years that you've done that?
Just from talking to my former colleagues, it's doing quite well, right? And however, in terms of setting up a digital bank as an extension to current bank, you still have to make very tough decisions about how are you going to build it? Are you going to leverage some of the existing capabilities? And the existing capabilities, of course, have been built over years, so there's a lot of strength there. But they also come with their own, in a way, opportunities and risks, because they're built around legacy systems and processes. So these are the decisions, right? So even if I just take the credit scoring example, then will you go back and use existing credit scoring methods, or are you going to build completely new credit scoring methods? And I think with what we have done for the bank I mentioned, we have a blend of old and new. But again, these are not easy decisions to make as an incumbent, right?
True. So today, I see that you guys have a lot of initiatives to help your partners and from different angles. So if I'm a fintech startups, I have like some idea, I'm trying to raise funds. Should I come to you guys, or are you, how do you
Absolutely.
approach new companies coming to you guys? Would you invest? Would you partner? Would you say no, we're gonna compete against you? How do you approach it?
Absolutely. I think all that is open, and really we're looking at multiple options, and we work with companies who are more established or companies who are completely new, right? And of course, we will not be able to work with everyone, just to be clear. But on the other hand, what we're trying to build is a platform. So even Razer Pay today as a wallet is a platform in a way, and we're putting mini apps into the wallet. So we have active conversations going on with a number of partners and merchants. And as and when, if we build a digital bank, we'll have the same concept of open banking platform. So at the end of the day, we're planning to open APIs as well to our bank, and then other startups, other fintechs will be able to write their own experiences. A little bit what happened in the hackathon. Right? So we built the platform, we opened the APIs, and now we have 70 experiences built on top of that.
Interesting. Sidetracked a little bit, right? So we talk a lot about different financial services and fintech in general, and obviously, you know, banking, e-wallet, loans. So from your own personal experience, what has been your biggest frustration as a consumer?
As a consumer, I think the post-sale experience in general, I think everyone is pretty good at this stage to onboard you as a customer, to sell your product, to set you up. I think a lot of effort and money went into that. But once you have an exception or something changes in your life,
Yeah.
and you try to adjust, I think that's the most frustrating part.
Can you share a little bit of what do you mean by that? Maybe give us some example of your experience with whatever bank that you bank with that you felt, oh my God, someone has got to kill these guys and build something better than this.
Well, I actually have an experience, and I will not name the bank, but I took a credit card, which I didn't need anymore. And giving up the credit card was harder than I thought it's going to be.
Really?
Yes. So I think that's really, again, being very tuned into people's lifestyles and people's needs, and not only thinking about from a product point of view, not only about closing a sale, but really being, you know, there for your customers during their journey.
So if I were to put you on the spot and say, hey, like, can you point out 3 main problems of today's banking experience? What would that 3 things be?
Well, I'm not sure how to pick the 3, right?
Okay, it can be 10 if it's that bad.
I think overall is what we keep saying is that the products are not tailored for the customers, and then the experience is not tailored either. So you would typically get products, and this is not 100% accurate statement, by the way, because some banks are doing some tailoring. However, most of the products, if you look at them, they're not really tailored. For example, if you want to make investments, the fund is there and that's it. But there is no fund necessarily tailored for a 16-year-old, let's say, right?
Yeah.
With credit and credit cards.
Yeah. So from maybe kind of taking a global landscape is that if we look globally in terms of the digital bank effort, you have different companies using different approach. So if you look at the UK and the Europe, it's all debit card based. You have Monzos and M26 and whatnot. And then you look at, say, Brazil, Nubank started out as a credit card provider. And then you go to US, they have a slightly different approach as well. And then you go to China, there's like e-wallet based. What are your thoughts around what might be the best course of action in our part of the world? And I don't know if it's going to be the same for across Southeast Asia, or maybe it's like Singapore will be one approach and Indonesia will be different, Malaysia will be different. What are your thoughts around it?
Right, so the way I look at this is you have to get the basics right. So every bank should have some form of a savings account. Every bank should have some kind of way of moving money around. Every bank should have a card these days so you can leverage the existing network. So you need to get those right. There's no question about it. And I think every one of the banks you mentioned, they have done a lot of work to get the basics right. But then I also believe that you need to differentiate. And differentiation comes from understanding your clients, for understanding the experience they actually need, not the one you think you should implement for them. And then really, really important, the part of integrating into their lifestyle. And there are banks talking about, you don't wake up in the morning to go to the bank, but you wake up in the morning, I don't know, to buy a car, right? So I think that's really key to understand the journey and the thinking process, the mental model that the customers go through, and plug into that and help them. I think that will be really differentiating.
Makes sense. Makes sense. That's interesting. As a CTO of one of the fastest growing kind of fintech companies in the region, right? What is keeping you awake? What are you excited about, and what are you worried about?
Well, what keeps me awake is going even faster. Like, we're moving fast, but I think speed is of essence, and we need to move faster. So then the question becomes, how can you move faster, right? And I think I always talk about a very simple framework: people, process, technology, right? So you have the right people who can go faster. And part of the people part is also to support them in the right way, the right skills, right tools. You make decisions, the right decisions faster, right? Then you have the right processes to go. And back to the committee conversation, what's the opposite of that? It's really agile, right? Are you nimble enough to be able to make decisions about what's next and then build and also release fast enough? So we're now on a monthly schedule, but we actually can release much faster than that. We can do it every second week, right? And then technology, do you actually have the technology to allow you to go fast? And this is, I think, where cloud is very important. Because again, back to my previous days, even provisioning development environment, when you run it in data center, it takes 6 weeks. You order the servers, you bring them in, you install them, you plug them in. So 6 weeks later, you can start developing. Right? When you're in the cloud, it takes a few seconds, and
Right.
you're ready to go. So that's what really keeps me awake at night, and that's where I put a lot of my effort into to become even more faster.
So if we look ahead in the next, I don't know, you say you guys plan things on week by week basis, right? But let's just say 3 to 5 years. What are you most excited about in terms of the prospect of the company?
Well, I'm very excited about our vision to become the global youth bank. And I'm
Sorry,
very
global what?
global youth bank.
Youth bank. Okay, gotcha.
So, and I'm very passionate about it as well.
Yeah.
So hopefully, and we will work very hard toward that. Hopefully, we get the license in Singapore. If not, we'll look in other places to realize that vision. And as I shared before, we have about 80 million fans around the world. And I think our mission is to build a bank that doesn't disappoint them.
That's great. That's great. And you touch on a very interesting point, right? Speed versus accuracy, and especially when you're in a regulated environment where innovation very often moves as fast as often move faster than the regulation, right? And how do you deal with that, right? Like obviously you want to launch your product tomorrow and two other features in a week time, and boom, boom, boom. Whereas, but in the banking industry, everything has to go by the book, and that kind of goes against the DNA of the company, right? Is that an issue for you guys to cope with that?
So before I answer that, fast doesn't mean compromising on things like security and quality, right? So, and that's always the challenge. How can you go very fast without breaking things, right? And make sure that you have the right controls in place. Now, in terms of engaging the regulator, I fully agree with you. To be able to go fast, you have to have a good relation with the regulator, and have some experience before. And I can tell you that the regulators have been also changing, and it's in their interest and the consumers and citizens' interest for these services to become better, cheaper, faster, right? So I've seen great work done by the regulators here in the region, both Singapore and Malaysia, and we have a good relationship with them. And then again, to your point, we wouldn't need to go back and ask for approval for every feature. On the other hand, once we're aligned on a roadmap, once we're aligned on a vision, that will allow us to have the right partnership and the right.
Right, right. I have something that maybe is a bit touchy, maybe a bit controversial. Right? We obviously see a lot of the CEO of Razer doing a lot of quite high-profile effort with the government and Prime Minister. Is that a deliberate effort to build relationship, or, well, I don't know, whatever that you can share. Right? I'm just curious to understand a little bit more.
Well, depending how controversial, right? So I think what we're doing can be viewed in many ways and can be also misinterpreted. I think our intentions are the best intentions, and we're here to help. And of course, we do want good relationships with our stakeholders, including our governments as well.
Do you think the regulators should have issued more licenses than two?
Well, you have to see it from their point of view, because there is a risk. You could give licenses to companies which don't make it, and part of the process as well, there's a chapter or a section where you need to say what happens if your business model doesn't work. So now, if they issue many licenses to many banks that are not going to work, then that will be a risk for the economy by itself. So I think going prudent initially, I think, is the right decision. But maybe if the first couple or first few that are issued are doing well, then I'm sure there's an opportunity for more people to come in. However, we need to be conscious about the size of the market as well. So that's why, in our case, we clearly state we want to build a global bank, ideally headquartered in Singapore.
Interesting. How do you view competition in this case? Are you worried? Do you think it's going to be like a winner takes all environment, or everyone's just targeting different segment as we see in today's like offline traditional banking?
I don't think there is a winner takes all. I think there is room for everybody who will get a license, and there is room for the incumbents as well. Also important, we're not here to kill everyone and disrupt everyone and take it all. No, we're here to serve our target segment, and also we're here to partner. Like, for example, if our products and services are not suitable anymore for our target audience, we can always refer them to an incumbent bank.
Makes sense. And in the interest of time, maybe like a last kind of wrap up, right? Do you have any advice for, I guess, CTOs or aspiring CTOs that wants to get into a position like yourself? Or what do they need to do today? And what is like a good CTO? How do you define that?
I think the role of the CTO is changing. And typically people were called IT heads, information technology heads.
Not so sexy, huh?
No, yeah, and also, it sounds more like you look after IT and that's it kind of role, right? So I think it's changing. I think CTOs need to be very business savvy, need to understand the customer, need to understand the products they build. But I think what is really important is to continue to build on the strengths of being a technologist. And I think the challenge with technology is always it changes fast. So learning is very important and staying abreast of the latest changes. So I keep talking about cloud. Everyone out there who hasn't learned about how to build and use cloud, they should go in there. I mean, for the CTOs, right?
Makes sense. Makes sense. Cool. I think we're up. Thank you so much for taking the time to have a chat with us. Really appreciate it. Thank you for everyone that has just dialed in to join our first live session from Wow Digital. The recording will be available soon, so stay tuned on your email and we will send out more information around that. And thank you very much and have a good day, everyone.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, everyone.